Hello, good morning and welcome to the Sunday Supplement. Coming up on today's show, from scoring to boring, Manchester City scores 7 against Stoke, but Jose Mourinho, he's accused of killing football after a 0-0 draw at Liverpool. Troy Deeney, he claims Arsenal, they don't fancy the rough stuff after Watford come from behind to win 2-1 at Vicarage Road against Arsenal. And Roy Hodgson, he's got Palace up and running with a 2-1 win over the champions Chelsea at Selhurst Park. 3 winners with us this morning. Martin Samuel, he's the chief sports writer at The Mail. James Ducker is the Northern football correspondent at The Telegraph. And Neil Custis, he's the chief Northern football writer at The Sun. Morning to you guys, good to see you as ever. Don't forget you can tweet the show at Sunday Sup. The best will appear on your screen over the next 90 minutes. OK, let's have a look at some of the back pages of the papers. This is the Sunday Mirror this morning. From scoring to boring, Manchester City score 7. James was at that game yesterday. And boring, Neil wrote about Manchester United's 0-0 draw at Anfield yesterday. We're coming straight on to that this morning. What a score and what a bore. Everyone getting tucked in to Jose Mourinho this morning for the way that he approached that game at Anfield yesterday. More bore. That's the back page of the Sunday Express this morning. And Ollie Holt, a regular on this programme, of course, he says, welcome back, Jose, the enemy of football. James's paper, The Telegraph, this morning, reflecting on Manchester City and those 7 goals yesterday at the Etihad, 7th heaven. The Sunday Times, they go for Palace. 641 minutes without a goal. They got 2 yesterday, an own goal initially, and then they go on to win it. This man, Wilfried Zaha, back in the Palace side. He scored Palace's winner. It was a case of shock and awe. Roy Hodgson getting his first win, and Palace's first win, their first goals of the season. And another shock as well, Mauricio Pochettino, back page of the Mail on Sunday. I'd love to manage England. Must be crazy. We'll get on to that in part 5 of today's programme. It's a book serialised in the Mail on Sunday this morning. But we're going to start at Anfield. Events yesterday at Anfield. Neil, you wrote about Mourinho and his approach to that game yesterday. It has been battered in the papers this morning, particularly reflections on the back pages of the papers. Was it boring? Did he park the bus? And is he killing football, as Ollie says in his piece in the Mail on Sunday this morning?
No, I think he got it absolutely spot on. What he did, I can't remember since when going to Anfield was a given for any away team, no matter how good they are. Manchester United, this man who's supposed to be anti-football, scored 4 goals 4 times in the previous 7 games. Now, you know, there was 2 chances in that game. Liverpool had 1, and Manchester United had 1. But it's Jose Mourinho's fault that it ended up 0-0. Jose Mourinho was inviting Jurgen Klopp to take a risk yesterday. Jurgen Klopp didn't take a risk. He claimed all his substitutions were positive. They were like for like. He didn't take a risk by taking a midfielder out and putting an extra forward up. So he was as concerned about Mourinho as Mourinho was concerned about Klopp. Now, while they had more attacking intent, Manchester United have scored, I think, 10 of their goals this season in the league in the last 10 minutes. Liverpool haven't scored after the 77th minute. So it makes sense, looking at that Mourinho hangs fire and then tries to pick them off at the end, because he knows that given the backing at Anfield, the intensity, the need for a win over Manchester United, that he's going to take a risk, but he didn't. Had he taken a risk, he knew that he's got the master tactician next to him who could take advantage of that. So, and when you talk about parking the bus for me is desperate defending, right? This is Manchester United's 7th clean sheet in 8 games. They were totally comfortable defending yesterday. Where the plan for me fell down was that Lukaku couldn't hold the ball up when it came out. Yes, he had men around him and what have you, but if he holds the ball up, he can then feed it off to people and they can play on the break. Lukaku was poor yesterday. Mkhitaryan went missing. That's not Mourinho's fault. To call it anti-football, Fergie's last 6 visits to Anfield finished with 4 defeats, right? 1 win in his previous 6 visits. But, yeah, of course, Man United traditions, he played it the right way and what have you. This is a good point. He got his spot on. He stopped Liverpool at Anfield in front of a passionate crowd the day they opened the stand for Kenny Dalglish and all that. I think he got his spot on, and I think to criticise him, I think it's easy to criticise him, it's easy to blame him, but Jurgen Klopp wasn't taking any great risks yesterday either. And he can come out, he's got great PR, and he can come out afterwards as the defender of all this is great in football and all that. He's had 1 win in 8. Look where they are, look where Manchester United are. I think Mourinho did the right thing for Manchester United yesterday.
Ollie's question in the press conference yesterday, he said, he pretty much asked Mourinho, he said, look, you spent 150 million or there and thereabouts in the summer on strengthening the team, improving the Manchester United team, but is that really all you've got? Will the money that football clubs and football managers spend always be thrown back at them when they don't get a result or when they don't show the ambition to go and win the game?
But, I mean, we've spent the first, 2 months of the season lauding United's expansive attacking football, and then they draw at Anfield and suddenly it's all doom and gloom and they can't attack at all. I mean, I think they could have played a slightly more expansive game. When you look, no Lallana, no Mane, I think they could probably have taken more risk and still been very secure defensively. I think when they went to Anfield last season, you know, I think Liverpool had won 5 on the bounce, had scored 16 goals. They were in really, really good form. This time, I think that defence has shipped something like 14 goals in its last 7 games. It's not, you know, it was there, I would say, for the taking. I'd say it's probably the best sort of chance you're going to get of going to Anfield for a long while and really sort of turning them over. But, you know, I mean, I'll follow on from Neil's point about Ferguson. Ferguson's last 16 visits to Anfield, he scored 13 goals. There was a 0-0 draw in September 2005 when he came out and said, this game now is too important for Man United to lose. You know, this is not just a Mourinho thing. You know, Ferguson would regularly be very, very pragmatic. And all these people coming out saying, you know, Ferguson was cavalier all the time. And Anfield, it's absolute nonsense. So, you know, I think the other thing as well is we are very, very quick to sort of denigrate sides when defensively they're chaotic. You know, Arsenal this season, Liverpool, we're moaning all the time about how poor they are defensively. If Wenger and if Klopp could organise a defence like Mourinho, they'd have a far better chance of winning the title. And I think, you know, you call him the enemy of football. You know, he's won 25 trophies in 17 years. I think sometimes it's a very easy tag to throw at him. I'd also say for the second time running, Klopp's plan A has been found wanting against sort of Mourinho's sort of low defensive block. And there's been very little criticism of him. You know, I think they've had, 8 shots on target against United in 180 minutes. Haven't found the net.
Is the coverage this morning unfair then on Mourinho?
No.
Because it's you would Liverpool being the home team, the onus is on them.
But Liverpool did make
attack.
the game. Liverpool did make the game. I don't agree that they had one chance.
How many did they have?
Well, I would say 3 or 4. I haven't put any in tomorrow's match report because it's irrelevant. It's a 0-0 draw. If you draw 0-0, you're failing the point of the game. Simple as that. The point of the game is to score goals. It's a failure. It's a failure in the point of the game. Manchester City put 5 past Liverpool, down to 10 men, at home. But there's different markers. So a 0-0 draw at Liverpool is, most seasons, a really, really good result. It might not be this season. You might actually be short because when Manchester City go to Liverpool, they are going to try to do what they did to them at the Etihad Stadium, which was wipe them off the pitch. And that's you know, you look at it, they're behind the count, to use a baseball phrase. So they're 2 points behind City now. The goal difference is going to slip away. They're going to have to be ahead of City on points at the end of the season because they're never going to win the league on goal difference. They're never going to win it on goals scored. City are changing what is a good result because they go to Chelsea and they play Chelsea not like they were champions, not like they were Chelsea, not like they were at Stamford Bridge. They played Chelsea as you'd go to any other team in the league and play them like that. It might not work. We'll see at the end of the season, but it's working at the moment because you cannot look at City and go, oh, they haven't played anyone yet. No, they've played Liverpool and they've beaten 5-0. They've played Chelsea and they won at Stamford Bridge. They've played Watford, who are the bolters this season. They're the 4th place, and now we're looking at Watford and thinking, could they do, not Leicester, not win the league, but could they actually be up there? Could they stuff one of the elite clubs for the top 4 places? What did Man City win at Watford? 6? 6. So Man City are actually changing what is a good result. So 0-0 against Liverpool at the moment, in any other season, you'd go, we'll take a point at Anfield. That's a good result. It might not be this season.
They've lost
it
once.
Might not
They've
be
lost
this
once
season.
at home since January. Liverpool.
Yeah, but they're not
If
beating,
Lukaku scores, are we talking about
ordinary teams? They're not beating... Yeah, if Lukaku scored, OK.
Are we then talking about a tactical masterclass then if Lukaku scores?
No, what? No, not necessarily. Not a tactical
won 1-0 away at
masterclass. 1-0
Anfield.
away. Yeah, but he didn't, did he? See, we can talk about a tactical masterclass if the tactical masterclass comes off. You can't talk about it if it's a 0-0 draw.
Well, I think it's come off if you get a 0-0 draw at Anfield.
Oh, OK, well, we'll see.
Don't you think United going to Anfield, though, there is a different association than for, City going? I think it's
that.
But it's one game. And I think
Mourinho's not playing that game though. He tries to make that point. I think yesterday, James, is that you guys can talk about Liverpool, Manchester United, and the rivalry, and you can get excitable about that. But he's looking at it in isolation, isn't he? He's looking at this as a rival, for a place minimum top 4.
I think he's good at disguising that. I think trips to Anfield have meant a lot to him for a long time, and it's a fixture he savours. But I think he's very, very clinical and sort of cold-eyed the way he looks at fixtures, and he'll have panned out, the next couple of months and what he thinks is very, very winnable, and he'll probably settle for a point. The Lukaku chance, if it goes in, it's 1-0. He'd be very confident of shutting up shop, just as last season when Ibrahimovic made an absolute pig's ear of a header from a great ball from Pogba. Again, that goes in. He'd have been confident of.
But do you think Liverpool really went for it? I don't.
I think they went for it more than Manchester United. Yeah,
they had more attacking intent because United.
Yeah, but they're playing Manchester United. They're playing one of two teams. You might include Tottenham in this, but we've got to see how the Wembley thing pans out for Tottenham, because 1-0 against Bournemouth doesn't mean that everything's turned round in one weekend. But they're playing one of 2, 3, at most 4 if you put Chelsea in the mix, teams that could win the league, because no one thinks Liverpool are going to win the league.
No.
So, they are playing a superior opponent. So, but they still went for it. They still went for it a little bit more than Manchester United, and they're at home, and that's what they do. But I just thought that yesterday you're playing a team that everyone believes have got huge defensive weaknesses. You're playing a team that haven't got their best forward. If you count Coutinho as a creative player rather than a finisher, so they're without him as well. And you just looked at that and thought, at half-time, and about 20 minutes into the second half, I turned around to Thump who's our Liverpool guy. I said, you can see what happens here. Man U will nick this in the last 10 minutes. Man U will bring on Rashford, they'll bring on, this. You look down that Manchester United bench, Matters on the bench or whatever. You look at the Liverpool bench, it isn't the same. You're thinking, they'll bring these guys on and they will take this game away from Liverpool in the last 10 or 15 minutes. Not only didn't it happen, it never looked like happening. There was never a point at which you were thinking, but in that last 10 or 15 minutes, Man U will nick this. It didn't happen. And
Liverpool have conceded 1 goal at home in 4 games.
Yeah.
This dodgy defence.
Yeah.
Only Man United are better than
Yeah,
in the league.
This is Klopp's point. Klopp said afterwards, we're stronger defensively than people think we are. We're a better defensive team than people think we are. But all the world over, if you put the two 11s against each other yesterday and you go, right, how many from that side of the team sheet will get in the team on that side of the team sheet? And this is a very fashionable thing now, these composite teams. Every newspaper does, composite team, the best 11, who'd get in this.
Pretty much everyone did it on Saturday.
Everyone did it on Saturday, and how many Liverpool players were in the team?
I think 2.
2.
Yeah.
2. So, let's not kid ourselves that this is a battle of equals. Manchester United are a much better team than Liverpool, and they didn't look it yesterday, and they didn't play as if they fancied themselves as a much better team. Whereas I think what Manchester City are doing is everywhere they go, they are going out as if, right, we are much better than Chelsea. We will play Chelsea off the park.
OK. Let's talk Klopp as well. Let's go back to the preamble, the press conference before the Manchester United game, James, because Klopp talked about himself as being the best man for the job. No one could do this job any better than I could do it at the moment, so why would anyone be talking about replacements or someone coming in to take this job? Did that set alarm bells ringing for you? It's an unusual thing to say. It's a spiky, prickly thing to say, isn't it?
He's looked a bit agitated for a few weeks, I think, Klopp. I mean, he can be quite a spiky individual anyway. I think we saw that. Yeah. We saw that at Dortmund. And when sort of the chips are down and they're in a bit of a difficult situation, I don't always think he sort of colours himself in sort of great glory. And we saw that at Dortmund. He used to get a little bit irritable. And You know, is it the dialogue in the sort of talk of a manager who's feeling the pressure? You know, possibly. I mean, I think I would have expected sort of Liverpool to have kicked on more this year than they have. I think, you know, you saw some real sort of building blocks sort of put in place, you know, last season. The only thing I say is, you know, they are obviously now missing Mane. Lallana's a big loss for them, but go back to the summer transfer window, you know, and they really did need to, you know, he's brought in Salah, but you needed to address other parts of that side. And they failed miserably to do it. I mean, they seemed to stake all the chips on getting Van Dijk. It didn't happen. And they don't look a particularly balanced side to me. They look like a side that every now and then is going to tear another side to pieces, and they can be devastating to watch. But if they go away, you know, the next week and they lose at Burnley, or, you know, they come short at Brighton, I don't think it surprised anyone.
No.
There's not that, you know, when you look at, I mean, I know Chelsea are struggling at the moment, but you look at Chelsea, you look at City, and you look at United, they are robust right through the side, really. And even some of the issues that City have had, they are being masked so heavily by the way they play. They pin other sides in their own half, really. So I think he erred hugely in his transfer dealings in the summer, and I just don't believe that some other managers would have allowed that summer to pass with what happened. Yeah. I think they started really sort of behind the 8 ball, and you know, he's given himself probably too much to do.
Yeah, sure. OK, paid the price for it yesterday. 0-0 draw at home to Manchester United yesterday at Anfield. OK, next up, James was at the Etihad yesterday to watch Manchester City. They scored 7 against Stoke. More on them next. Welcome back. Let's talk Manchester City now, because James was at the Etihad Stadium yesterday, and I'm just getting the impression, reading your match report this morning, James, that Kevin De Bruyne was your man of the match.
Yeah, I mean, he's my favourite player in the Premier League. You know, I could sit there and just watch him all day. I mean, my Twitter feed was going on and on from United fans saying, you know, it's only Stoke. Like, you know,
Okay.
like that.
Like with Stoke.
What? Sorry.
They drew
yeah,
2-2 with
exactly.
Stoke.
United drew 2-2 with Stoke.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't matter. Like, you know, United's problem last year was they couldn't beat these sides, and now they are. I mean, you have to beat what's in front of you. And I mean, it wasn't. Mark Hughes was very gracious actually afterwards, but he just held his hands up and said, actually, sometimes some of the passes and some of the strikes we just couldn't defend against. And De Bruyne yesterday was, you know, operating on a level that, you know, I think everyone, and I said in my match report, at times everyone was struggling to catch the breath, and it literally was like that. I mean, Fernandinho scored from 30 yards. It was an absolutely sensational strike. Didn't even get in the top 3 goals in the game because there was 3 passes from Kevin De Bruyne that honestly just left you sort of, you know, open mouthed. The disguised pass for, I think, City's second, when literally he sent everyone else in the stadium the other way, including about 4 Stoke defenders.
And the press box.
Was incredible, and the press box, absolutely. And then, I mean, the ball, there was a couple of balls sort of into the box, and you could see the despair on the faces of the Stoke defenders and goalkeeper, because it was put into a place where it was impossible to defend. And Guardiola said afterwards that the strikers and the attackers have got to make those movements because they know exactly where the ball is coming every single time. His weight of pass is as good as sort of anything I've ever seen. And me and Neil were chatting off air earlier. Last year, you know, very good at dispatching some of the smaller sides, but didn't really influence some of the big games as much as you see this year. I mean, he was decisive against Chelsea. He was decisive against Shakhtar Donetsk, a very good Shakhtar Donetsk side in the Champions League. You know, first year under Pellegrini was excellent, but he's playing in a deeper midfield role now, and he's reveling in it. Guardiola's built his entire team around him. I mean, he's played with, you know, he's managed Xavi and Iniesta and Messi. And I think with the exception of Messi, he puts on a different plane from the rest. You know, Guardiola thinks he's as good as anything he's worked with. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Harry Kane, you take him out of the Spurs team and there's so much less. I think De Bruyne makes City so much more. And particularly when you've got another guy, David Silva, next to him, who just simply does not lose the ball. It it's an intoxicating sort of combination, and they were just marvellous to watch City yesterday. Honestly, I mean, I know they're at home, at Stoke were poor, but they were ransacked.
This was a special performance. You look pained, Neil.
No, I just think there's some goals you just can't stop, and no matter what you do as a team, and I think City scored about 4 yesterday, which I'm not sure who could have stopped them. I think you make any run as a forward for De Bruyne, and he's going to find you. I don't think it's a matter of you thinking where De Bruyne is going to put the ball. It's you just make the run and De Bruyne will find you. Particularly that one for Sané and that disguised pass that you mentioned earlier when everyone thought he was going to shoot. But he gets the space to play that because teams have so much else to think about as well. Often title-winning sides, there's a standout player, there's a player that makes them tick, or there's 2 or something like that. City have got about 5. David Silva, for me, is the best player on the ball in the Premier League. He never looks at the ball, it always just stays on his foot, like Ryan Giggs at his best. Nobody talks about David Silva because of what De Bruyne's doing. But if you concentrate on De Bruyne, David Silva's going to take you to pieces, as will Aguero, as will Jesus, as will Sané. It's just everywhere. And this Manchester City team, if they do go on to win the league, I think could be regarded as the greatest Premier League team, maybe next to United in the late 90s, that we've ever seen, because it is simply that good. And
better than Arsenal's Invincibles 2004.
Oh yeah. Arsenal.
Too many draws, Fergie.
Too
many draws.
As they broke a 300-year-old record, he went, I remember that. He said, lots of draws.
12, I think, was it?
But also, the big thing that's happened at City, for all we're talking about this attack, is the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Changing the goalkeeper has made that defence a lot more confident. Against City last season, you just had to get a shot on target and you were scoring. Not with this guy. This guy... They got a goalkeeper who was great with his feet, but unfortunately just couldn't use his hands. This guy can. And there's a lot more confidence in the back 3, 4, whatever they play, to pass it around, to pass it to him, to do what Guardiola wants them to do. They were so nervous last season, but changing the goalkeeper, I think, has made as big an impact on Manchester City as what De Bruyne is doing.
OK. Is it in danger of turning into a procession the way that City are playing, the number of goals they're scoring?
No, I don't think so, because I think United are a very good team. I think Tottenham have the potential to be a very good team.
Harry Kane.
You can never rule out Chelsea because of what happened last year when we all ruled out Chelsea, and next thing you know, they'd won 12 games or whatever and they were top of the league and never let it go. So I don't think it will turn into a procession. I think that this has the potential, as Neil says, to be a truly exceptional title-winning team if they can sustain it, because they're already. This is, you've got to go 1894, is it? 1894-95 season is the last team to score 29 goals in 8 games. I thought it was quite it's been bandied about a bit since yesterday, hasn't it? It's the first team to score 29 goals in the first 8 games since 1894-95. I can remember looking at the Preston Invincibles team. I mean, you've got to remember what football was like in 1894-95. When Arsenal... I'll give you an example.
OK.
Arsenal versus the Preston Invincibles. Here's one thing the Preston Invincibles didn't have to put up with: a crossbar. They didn't have crossbars in the late 19th century, right? If it went between the posts, you were, and the referee thought, well, that's. It was in,
I thought that was the rule till I was 12.
Was it rugby then?
It was. We were talking when Everton won. It's a fledgling game. Rules are.
Doesn't Christian Benteke still think that's the case?
Yeah, probably. But do you know what I mean? So this is the sort of era that we're now looking for comparisons with the way City have started the season, and it hasn't been an easy start. The conspiracy theories you always get about United, they've got an easy start. It's a complete fluke what happened with United those first 7 games. You couldn't possibly have planned that in a darkened room, that you'd play 7 of the 8 bottom teams as it stood a couple of weeks ago, you couldn't have possibly planned that. You know, it was just a fortuitous start for United that they played a lot of quite ordinary teams. City haven't had that. They played Liverpool. You know, they've played Watford. They've played the good teams. Chelsea. You know, and they've still scored 29 goals. And I thought it was very interesting yesterday. If you listen to what Pep says after the match, and he said about what a great game it was, and it was great for the fans because they saw a lot of goals. Both teams scored, and you're thinking, you don't hear that very often, that the manager seems actually happy that both teams have scored because it's good for the fans. And I don't think he believes that. I don't think he was celebrating Stoke's goals or whatever. But it's very interesting to have a manager who seems to be edging towards the I don't mind if Stoke score 2, as long as we score, you know, 3 or in this case 7.
Not judging by his reaction.
No, absolutely. So I'm not saying that that's what he actually thinks, but it is quite an interesting philosophy that a guy looks at it and thinks, OK, well, I'll take a little bit of to and fro, as long as at the end of it we've got more goals than they have, and it shows you his priorities.
Just to finish off on Pep, what's the difference between this time? Well, not this time last year, but last season. Let's take the Monaco game for example in the Champions League, when things looked to be unravelling at Manchester City, and can this guy really get it right? Is he suited to Manchester City? Is he suited to English football? Can he do it again in the Champions League? Of course, he won the trophy with Barcelona. But what's changed for Guardiola? Is it just he's brought more and more players, he's had the funding, he's brought the assets, he's brought in the good players, or is there more to it?
Well, I think you cannot deny sort of the impact, you know, of the transfer window.
Because just going at the Monaco game, there would have to be concerns over those 2 legs, whether this guy is going to do it.
The first leg, obviously, you know, they won 5-3. The second leg, they set up as if they were the team chasing a 2-goal, you know, deficit. It was, you know, and they just got overrun by a team that sort of demolished them at times on the break. But you speak to a lot of people who followed Guardiola for a long time, and you listen to some of the sort of the top managers, and they say that his methods and what he tries to bring to his team and get his players to do are very, very complex and take time for the players to adjust to. Sometimes it might take, you know, some De Bruyne's and David Silva's picks it up, you know, very, very quickly. Others took a year or so. So there's definitely that. There's players understanding his methods. I think the full-backs have made a huge issue. I mean, let's not forget Benjamin Mendy's out, and he wasn't there yesterday, and they were still played like that. But the full-backs have made a huge difference. Kyle Walker's been fantastic for them. Neil rightly says Ederson has made a huge difference. John Stones has been excellent in the last 6 weeks. I mean, seriously good. Yep. He was brilliant yesterday.
He was very good at Chelsea.
Making a lot less mistakes. Aggressive as well. You know, we always know he's quite good on the ball, but, you know, makes silly mistakes. He was knocking players off the ball left, right and centre yesterday. Looked aggressive. Looked like he had faith in his goalkeeper, you know, behind him, than making light of Vincent Kompany's absence. De Bruyne's sort of move, I mean, it did happen towards the end of last season, but playing a deeper role has helped. And then, you know, Jesus is now, you know, he's back fit again. And I mean, Bernardo Silva cannot get in the side. And that's all credit to Raheem Sterling as well. Guardiola is making a far, far better player of Raheem Sterling. I mean, everyone expected Sterling would be the one to go and Bernardo Silva come in. Leroy Sané, there's such competition for places that everyone knows that you've got to be on your toes, really. And it's very, very well thought through. It's very well oiled. There's been some key additions in key areas that have allowed him to play much more like... The thing fell down last year heavily on the fullbacks. I mean, the fullbacks are so crucial, and the goalkeeper. The fullbacks are so crucial to the way he wants to play. Yeah. In terms of the way they liberate the midfield and the options and the movement that they're creating. I mean, I watched Germany against Northern Ireland during the international break, and it's very, very similar to the way you know, City play. The movement and the front sort of 5 for those 2 midfielders, for Rudy and Toni Kroos, is very similar to what you get for De Bruyne and David Silva. And it's just the number of unselfish runs the City players make to create space for those other players is phenomenal to watch. The interchange in a position is remarkable. So there's been it's not a single thing, but there's been a lot of things that are coming together.
Yeah, certainly coming together for Guardiola. 7-2 victory over Stoke yesterday up at the Etihad. Martin, I want to dissect this Harry Kane team quote from Guardiola, because you were there at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah, it means nothing. It means nothing. He didn't mean it like it was said. It didn't mean it like it was said. It's a spat between managers. Who gives a monkeys, really? I mean,
Well, Poch did.
I know,
Poch
but
did.
I can't
He's
understand.
insulted by it. He's offended, isn't he?
Yeah, but I mean, it was nothing. He didn't mean it like that. He didn't mean it like that at all. He didn't mean it that they were a one-man team or whatever. He was praising Harry Kane.
Absolutely. I mean, it's ridiculous. Pochettino's reaction to it is absolutely ridiculous. I saw it as him praising Harry Kane, and also to this without Harry Kane, Spurs are not doing anything like what they did last season. They're not doing anything like what they're doing this season.
What's the insult?
Simple as.
We've been talking Dimitri Payet team. What's the insult?
Because we've spent 15 minutes on Kevin De Bruyne, are we being disrespectful for the rest of the Man City team? We're just praising an exceptional striker at the top of his career, something like we haven't seen possibly for 15 years in an English forward, and Guardiola's buying into that. I mean, the reaction from Pochettino was way over the top, ridiculous.
The truly disparaging remarks, I think, have been from Conte towards Spurs.
Yes.
Towards the end of last season and during the summer, where he really,
he's tried to
absolutely
to niggle.
I think Guardiola. I mean, you might have a different view, Ash. I mean, my view was it was flippant, and maybe
he had scored a hat trick.
Maybe it might have been mischievous, but. Conte's remarks about Pochettino and Spurs were far more deliberate.
Which are a big because he's saying Pochettino, well, they haven't won anything yet. And
exactly.
We've got the same demands placed on us.
Exactly. There's nothing like the pressure, on Spurs that there is Chelsea.
I think Guardiola's genuinely bemused by the whole thing, isn't he?
He seemed to be perplexed on a
He'd just
Friday.
beaten Chelsea. He was very happy. He was not sitting there thinking about every single thing that was said. I mean, it does seem ridiculous that a man comes into a press conference, gets asked a question, gives an answer, and then it's, he's been disrespectful. Let the man speak. There's not enough people who want to speak. Let the man speak.
Absolutely.
When they do speak, we tell them off, though.
Well, it's nonsense. The thing with Guardiola, the more time they spend with him, the better they get. There's not a single player at Manchester City that you look at now that you don't sit there and think, actually, he's better than last season. He's better than last. Everyone's better than last season. Stones is better than last season. Sane's better than last season. Everyone is better than last season. That's the fact that De Bruyne is better than last season. You go through the team. Sterling is improving. Sterling. Fabian Delph comes in and plays at fullback, and suddenly you're looking at it and thinking, he can play fullback. People, before that, people would doubt he could play central midfield, which was actually his position. Now you're looking at him thinking he can play fullback, he can move into midfield. That's what good managers do. It's what Mourinho has done at Manchester United. Good managers, the more time you're with them, the better it gets.
For all the 7 goals yesterday, it was the Chelsea performance that, for me, stood out.
Phenomenal.
Sensational.
To go to Stamford Bridge and play like that. You look at England managers, right? That's part of the problem. You can actually see it. The longer they're with the England manager, the worse they get. It starts off all right, and then they spend a bit of time with them, and it all goes downhill. That's absolutely true.
Poch says he can make the best
of his record.
Poch wants to be the England manager, according to the back page of the Mail on Sunday this morning. OK, next up, we're going to talk... do you want to talk Arsenal?
Why do you keep coming to me on Arsenal? Oh, should he go? Should he stay? They've lost a game.
Oh, Troy Deeney. Well, Troy Deeney seems to think he should go, judging by his comments yesterday after Watford beat Arsenal. We'll talk about them. It's all coming next year on the Sunday Supplement. Welcome back with us this morning. Martin Samuel, James Ducker and Neil Custis. Let's just remind you what's in the papers this morning. The back page of the Mail on Sunday. Pochettino, extracts from his book, serialised this morning. He wants to manage England. If I was him, I'd stick with Tottenham for a bit longer. Sunday Mirror, scoring. Manchester City, they got 7. James at the game yesterday, but boring. Neil and Martin both watched Liverpool and Manchester United grind that game out 0-0. It's brutal, though, for Mourinho, rather, not for Pep. Pep 7, Jose 0 is the Mail on Sunday sports section. Pull-out reflecting the 7 goals yesterday scored by City, none from United. Sunday Times this morning, Palace, you wait 641 minutes for a Palace goal. They got 2-1, an own goal. To kick things off for them yesterday, Roy Hodgson up and running with that magnificent 2-1 win over Chelsea yesterday. And then the atomic bomb, Tom Cleverley. scoring the winner yesterday for the Hornets, for Watford against Arsenal. Same old story for them. We're going to get onto it right now, though, because it was particularly impressive comeback by Watford. Same old failings in that Arsenal defence, but you were particularly impressed with the job that Watford have done this season so far.
Yeah, Marco Silva, you know, I mean, he came into Hull and you could see very clearly that this is a guy who, I mean, we were talking before about Guardiola improving the players he has. Marco Silva is a coach. You know, he makes players better, and he's got a very clear sort of tactical framework and system as well. I mean, when he came into Watford, they basically said to him, look, don't worry about everything else. Concentrate on this first team, work with what you've got and make them better. And you look at the Hollowbasses and the Britoses, and they buy in totally to what he's doing, and he's making them into a very sort of very capable, very well organised side. They all believe, and they've scored something like three last-minute goals, I think, you know, to win a couple of games, draw one.
The last three matches they've changed the result basically in injury time or the last minute. You know, so I mean, they know what to do. I mean, Chalobah was missing, is obviously injured, but that midfield with Decore, him and Cleverley has worked very well. There's better midfield, you know, trios in the league. Of course there are, but it's a very, very good blend and balance there. You know, Cleverley, who, you know, one criticism of him is he doesn't, you know, score the goals maybe he should do, which he certainly did sort of earlier in his career. But he's the player that when Marco Silva wants to get instructions across, he's the one who calls them across. He sees that he's got the intelligence to play on that side. And also, you know, as Troy Deeney said in his remarks about Arsenal, which was absolutely brilliant, is they are not scared to rough a team up as well. You know, they like to play football. They're very, very well drilled, but they'll throw the weight around as well. I think he's a very, very talented coach, Marco Silva, and I think they'll do, you know, the fourth now. They're not going to finish fourth, we know that, but I think they've got a very good chance of top 10, top 12.
The last time a guest said something like that, a pronouncement like that, was about Rickie Lambert, when Martin Lipson sat there and said Rickie Lambert will never go to a World Cup with England. At the end of that season, he did. So be careful, Watford fans. He could finish fourth this season. Troy Deeney, his comments, James just mentioned them, particularly colourful. What was he just telling it how it is? It's rare for an opposition player.
Brilliant.
To talk in those terms.
Yeah. But
was he just telling it how it is? This is Arsenal. This is how you get about them. This is how you beat them.
Yeah, I think he was telling it how he is, and I think it was, you know, I think if there'd been, God forbid, there was a press officer nearby and said, "Oh my God, he said something interesting. You know, it might make a back page lead. This, you know, we're going to have to sort him out and put him through media training or something like this." The very fact that Troy Deeney is now the main man who's actually, because he's actually said something, tells you where we're at in that situation. But I think he was absolutely right. But having said all that, Arsenal had the chances to be over the hill and far away before half-time. I don't think Arsenal played that badly. I think they were roughed up. I think what Deeney coming on did create holes and what have you. I thought Cleverley was excellent in the way he spread the ball about, very intelligent player. But Arsenal should have been over the hill. I mean, they really should. The penalty is not a penalty, but we only know it's not a penalty after the replays. Yeah. I mean, all this stuff about, you know, and I try to speak up for the refs as much as I can, because there was a circle around the feet there to decide whether there was contact. Now, on absolute first watch, you have to make a decision on first watch to yourself and say, I think that's a penalty. First watch, I think that's a penalty. Watch it on television. Now, once the circle's round and we've got right in on the feet, the referee's absolutely dropped a blunder there. Scandalous decision, Wenger says. Ridiculous.
That was nonsense.
Terrible to say that against a referee when that's going at full speed and it looks like a penalty. But forget that. That's not the reason Arsenal lost. Arsenal lost because they couldn't take their chances, and they had the chances to win. I don't think they played badly. I just think they lost it. Watford didn't win it. They lost it.
Yeah. We've been talking about the sides that make an impression and impact at the top of the table. Are Arsenal in a position, with the players they've got, the season they've had so far, OK, we accept they lost yesterday, again, Martin, but are they in a position at all of strength to say, OK, they can make an impact at the top?
At the very top, no, I don't think so. If you're talking about will they challenge for the title this season,
Which is what their fans are. Which is what their
I
fans
don't
demand.
I don't think they will. They might have a little run, and they might have a good run somewhere where they're up there, and for a brief moment it looks as if they, if they win and everyone else loses, they could be back in it. But I think when it actually matters, that last couple of months where it matters, I don't think we're going to be talking about can Arsenal do it.
They always play well when it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Like at the end of last season.
They get there, and then they fall away, and then once it doesn't matter, they're wonderful.
It's like we forget they finished second 2 seasons. Two seasons ago.
Tottenham didn't finish. Tottenham. Everyone thinks that Tottenham will come second the last 2 seasons.
Although they finished 5th last season.
They've lost to Stoke and they've lost to Watford. City scored 13 goals past those two sides.
So that's the gap.
That's where you're at.
That's the gap.
Arsenal will be lucky to finish 5th.
Yeah, because if Watford are going to be a sort of bolter, if they are going to be a team that could get into the top 4, so then there's 3 places. Well, Arsenal aren't going to get in the top 3, so it's.
You're that impressed by Watford that you think that they could sustain this run?
Yeah, I'm always. I wrote a column many years ago when Stoke were up there that said why can't I think the headline says why can't Stoke win it? I didn't really write about them winning it. I wrote about them coming top 4.
Headline right.
And everyone Arsenal fans never let you forget it and all of this. But actually, I've always thought that the Leicester thing, of course it's a 5,000 to 1 shot, but I've always thought that the elite teams aren't maybe quite as good as we think they are, and that there has always been the potential for someone to come from outside. So when I see Watford in the top 4 early on, you sit there and think, OK, yeah, they could sustain this. They're a good team. They're a good team. He's a good manager. They're getting good results. They're playing for 94 minutes all the time, which is a talent as well to keep going to the end. I don't mind, as James said, I don't mind mixing it up. I don't mind slinging Troy Deeney on, and he's a big lump, and he knocks everyone about. And Per Mertesacker didn't fancy it enough, getting stuck in there right at the very end for that last goal. Zaha, well, I mean, when you watch that goal, Tom Cleverley is standing in the penalty. He's not moving. He's standing in the penalty area, and Zaha is standing watching him. Well, that's what you want from your defensive midfielder, a casual observer.
That was scandalous.
I mean, that...
But Cleverley's very clever there to stand in space rather than to go in where the ball is or to get in, mix it. He's just standing saying, if I'm going to have a chance to score here, it's got to break out of this.
But he might have thought someone might stand
Well,
next to him.
I know, yeah.
The
other bloke had a great view of it,
But they deserve to lose because they played in blue,
Do you get the...
and they should never play in blue, red and white, against Watford.
Do you get the impression with Arsenal, though, that there's an air at the... I mean, it's probably been said every week on this, I'm sure it has, but there's an air at the club, not amongst the fans necessarily, but it doesn't really matter if they don't win the league,
I think it matters to them.
To the fans, I know, but I think there's an air at the club that can roll down to the players that, you know what, look at our record, how we finished second, how we finished the top. I know 5th last season, but I don't think there's enough intensity there to suggest that it really matters to the people that really matter at Arsenal, i.e. the board and what have you, and I think that filters down. And I know you're fed up with Arsenal, should he go, should he not go, and all this sort of thing, but the very fact that gets discussed with one bad result is detrimental to the side.
Of course, but I think that the malaise you're talking about there comes because you've got an American owner like Stan Kroenke, who comes from a system that doesn't have relegation and that there's this sort of renewal every single season, and you can't win. The only way you can go down effectively is if no crowds turn up and you're not generating the revenue, and they just take the franchise off you and move it 2,000 miles away.
The Venky's at Blackburn still think that.
Yeah, absolutely. But he comes from that sort of background. You look at Kroenke's clubs, franchises in America, they're not greatly successful. They exist, and America have got this way that everyone becomes very rich. And, you look at the NFL and the protests. The only way Trump it now looks like winning that sort of row about the taking the knee protest is he started going after the money. He started talking about the money, and all the owners suddenly went, oh, no, not the money, don't touch the money. So Kroenke comes from that background. And it's very easy to look at the Premier League and look at all the money from the Premier League, and they're part of that big six that are trying to get even more money from the overseas rights, etc., etc. And look at it and think, why do I want to do my brains trying to win the league when we can tick along very, very nicely as a business, not as a franchise, but certainly as a business, and I don't actually have to risk anything. And I think Neil's right, that at the top, that Malaysia... I don't think it's setting with Wenger. I think Wenger is still trying to win stuff. But I think the people who own the club look at it in a different way now and have worked out that you can still make an awful lot of money even if you don't win the league.
Wenger looks content to me, though, with finishing top four.
You think...
I think the last 5 years...
He's going greyer every time you see him, and... No, I don't think... he won't compromise, but I don't think he's happy coming top four.
But I can't understand how a manager of the teams he created and managed, although some partly at the start, some of it was inherited and all that, but he definitely turned them into, got a winning mentality, a never say die mentality, a strength in there that wouldn't be beaten. I can't understand that this is the same bloke in charge of this team, that this can happen to, as it did yesterday.
He valued physicality.
This is a guy who won 3 Premier League titles in his first 6 or 7 years at the club.
He valued
Now it's 3 and 20
physicality as well as grace.
They
were arguably had one of the best blends of that the Premier League's ever seen.
Well, Vieira and Petit became a blueprint for how the central midfield, that sort of piston thing, how the central midfield should operate. And you look at Arsenal's midfields in the last 5, 6, 7 years, and you think, how did the guy that put Petit and Vieira together end up with this midfield? Because this is as far removed from that as anything.
Look at the wide players he had. They're all 6 foot. Henry, Pires. You know, they were big players. They weren't little, fairy downs. They could mix it when they wanted to as well.
Yeah. OK, we want to move on to Palace and Chelsea. Big win yesterday for Palace. Which is the biggest story here? Palace, well, scoring for a start, winning a game under Roy Hodgson, winning their first Premier League game of the season, or Chelsea's slide. 2 games, 2 defeats in a row. They play Roma in the Champions League on Wednesday night at Stamford Bridge. But are there concerns at Chelsea, or is the big story here that Palace's win?
I mean, there's got to be concerns at Chelsea, but I was hugely impressed with Crystal Palace. I think a team that's lost 7 and not scored any, you don't expect them to have the spirit they had yesterday. And credit to Roy Hodgson, who, as Martin alluded to yesterday, took England in very much in a different direction, which was the idea in the first place, but not quite the direction it went. For doing that, for getting a spirit in the side, for getting a cohesive way they were playing. And Zaha was fabulous. And Zaha's goal, in a way, his goal encapsulated the determination within that team yesterday. When he nearly lost it, he kept going, still got it and scored. And I thought Palace were excellent, but Chelsea should be winning that game. Chelsea's champions should be winning that game. And
well, they shouldn't be playing the way they did. That's for sure. There's no right to win any game. I know it's an old cliche about wanting it more and all that, but that was very much a classic example.
How did they play? Were they negative or?
They just didn't have the intensity. They didn't have the impetus. They didn't have the motivation that you see from Manchester City, from Manchester United, from the teams chasing, from a team you'd expect to be chasing.
I saw the highlights
and defending
last night,
of course, and defending their title. They didn't look like a team that wanted to defend their title.
Right.
When you're obliged to defend it, aren't you?
Something not right, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's something not right. It's a strange thing with Chelsea. You just look at it and you think.
But we were in Madrid for we watched them beat Atletico, Martin, in the Champions League. 3 days later, they played Manchester City and lose.
Well, I know, but do you not think that with Chelsea, because of this, the constant turnaround of managers, and because of this sort of summer that they've had, that was, there's something not quite right. Where you look at it with Conte and you think it's almost as if he's a bad month away from getting tapped on the shoulder and told, thanks very much, it's time to go sitting again.
And the point is, everyone seems to know it as well.
Yeah.
And that is being reflected in the team. It's almost like the last days of Mourinho, first time round, and almost second time round, where it's just
starting.
The spark's just gone. It's just gone, and all his antics on the sideline, shouting and all that, it's not working anymore. It's not happening. The electricity's gone.
I liken it to what happened in the summer at Chelsea. I liken to the Mancini summer. when, you know, didn't really
When he
maybe
wanted
get...
Van Persie.
Yeah, wanted Van Persie, didn't get him, you know. Look, there's that, City say one thing, Mancini says the other, but, you know, that summer did not go well. He wanted to kick on, and it did not go well, and there was just a gradual unravelling, you know, and it, again, you know, Mancini, much like Conte, very passionate Italian, will speak his mind, you know, very much wants it his way. And I just see a few similarities there. The only thing I'd say is that performance in Madrid was one of the... I mean, I didn't see it on the night. I made a point of actually watching it because everyone was going on about how, you know, a few days later, everyone was going on about how good it was. I mean, they were fabulous. I mean, that was not...
There's 20 minutes in the first half that is as good as I can remember seeing any English team against a top European team.
So there's something to work with, isn't there? It's not like it's a hopeless cause. But then, I mean, maybe...
He got Morata to work with yesterday, Batshuayi substituted yesterday, 57 minutes in. Yeah.
That's the difference between, you know, something like Chelsea and Man City at that stage with Mancini and what Manchester United did. Every time Manchester United won the league, they made sure they had a really good summer straight away to add an extra couple of players, to make them stronger, to keep everyone on their toes and all that. Manchester City missed a huge trick that summer in terms of the opportunity to go on and dominate for 3 or 4 years. They missed a huge trick that summer with Mancini by not getting the targets, by not pushing for them. It was almost as if everyone went, oh, we've done it at last, as opposed to, right, we've done it now, let's go again, as Mancini wanted. They missed a huge trick there.
Should he still be in the job? Oh, then let's not go there. We're going to go to international.
Well, you should at least have a picture up somewhere at the end. But
Where is he?
He's said it's in Pittsburgh.
Oh, of course he is, yeah. OK, how's he getting on?
I think they're doing all right, as they would do with him in charge.
Of course they would.
Yeah, it's a bit...
OK, we are going to talk international football next. We're going to talk UEFA Nations League. We're going to try and make sense of it. All that is coming next. OK, let's talk UEFA Nations League because they tried to make some sense of it by releasing various statements during the week about how it's all going to work next year. September, October, November, lots and lots of matches in groups A, B, C and D, Martin. Good idea, bad idea? Will it improve international football?
You know, without shining light on magic here, Neil texted in the week to say, we're going to be talking about this, so, you know, make sure you have a look at it.
And
I have had a look at it, I have had a look at it. And it's pretty much like Lord of the Rings. You don't actually... You know, there's some things in life that are so complex that really it's just not worth your time and money trying to work them out. Lord of the Rings was the same. There's a load of hippies when I was at school. They're reading Lord of the Rings. They're listening to Gong. Gong ain't bad, actually, but, I mean, Lord of the Rings, you can well do it. I've tried it, and honestly, if you haven't read it, don't bother. You know, it's like the Kardashians. I don't know why we need to keep up with them. And really... I'm not interested in finding out why we need to keep up with them. And it's pretty much the same with this tournament. Someone in a big hat somewhere, on the day that we play Belgium or the Isle of Puffins or whoever we're playing, will write or will say in some broadcast what it actually means. At that point, prick up your ears and take an interest, because then you'll actually know what we're playing for in the evening. Until then, life's too short. Get on with your life, have a nice time, you know, be nice to one another and stay as far away from this as you possibly can, because no good can possibly come of it. The only good thing with UEFA is they have actually messed up their own tournament rather than messing up someone else's league, which is what they usually do with the Champions League money, and, you know, so you get the same title, same team wins the title in Belarus for like 30 years on the turn. So usually they mess up somebody else's competition. This time they've actually messed up their own competition, so at least, you know, there's no harm done, really. But as far as what it means, who cares?
It's like fiendish Sudoku, isn't it? I mean, I got a migraine sort of trying to work out...
I wish I'd never sent this text now. I shouldn't have bothered, should I? I should have just... The UEFA Nations League talk.
The current qualifying system for the Euros, I got a migraine just trying to work out the second place permutations. Anyway, you know, you've got to take off the bottom teams, then you've got to work out on... And then this comes along.
As far as I can see, half the teams that are going to play then in the group stages have already qualified anyway, so it's just a generous invitation. If if you actually... The only way it makes sense is if somebody is sitting in a room somewhere with a brief from the Premier League and the Bundesliga and La Liga and all of the major leagues in Europe, and the brief says, can you find a way of killing international football stone dead? This is what you would come up with.
Well, I because of your text, I was Googling...
The secrets of the Sunday supplement, we actually communicate with each other. It's amazing,
last
isn't it?
night. And I was like, why are we talking about a furniture store? You know, why are we talking about the American Football League? It took me, anyway, I finally found it. And I was like... Well, the biggest shock was England were in Group A, for starters, so immediately...
I was surprised by that.
I thought this thing's got to be flawed. But again, I mean, it reminded me of when they tried to mess with whatever you want to call it, the Intercontinental Cup, the World Club Cup, and turn that into a tournament as they did in '99, and it never took off. It never took off because it's not got the history. I mean, that competition, everyone knew Liverpool were the best team in the world in the late 70s, early 80s, but they would constantly lose that final. But nobody remembered, nobody thought made any difference. And they tried to mess with that and turn it into something really special. But no club really thought it was that special. It was just a little celebrity FIFA exercise, what have you. This won't mean nothing to anybody. Because what you're actually doing... The reason the World Cup means something is because it is every 4 years. You know, lots of other reasons, but it comes around every 4 years.
Absolutely.
So you look at the scenes in Panama, you look at the scenes in Egypt, you look at any scenes with this.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it starts to dilute a product like, as you were saying, with the European Championships. The European group stages of most major tournaments can be very dull because everyone just makes sure they get through. European Championships
was never like that. You had to hit the ground running.
It was brilliant
Well, you
at the
say
start.
it's easier to
It's
qualify
easier.
than it is
Once you've got a
to
tournament,
qualify.
it's actually easier. It's harder to get knocked out of the European Championships at the group stage now, in the finals. It's harder to get knocked out than it is to qualify.
I mean, it's had to change to an extent. I mean, I remember, for example, I think it was Argentina 78. We were in a group with Italy and Wales. We both beat Wales home and away.
Yeah.
I think we got knocked out on one goal difference. So it had to change to an extent because that was just blatantly unfair. But how it is now is just dull. And the European Championships, again, by increasing the number of teams in it, has totally ruined the excitement of what was a more exciting tournament probably than the World Cup.
Will England fans be crying in the stands? Will there be shots? Will TV cameras pan round Wembley Stadium to England fans
if they
crying
will.
in
When they
the
see the
stands?
prices to park your car there.
How much did you claim on expenses for that?
Tottenham's 40 quid.
40 quid.
Tottenham's 40 quid.
80 quid on extra.
Steve McLaren will have been gutted that the Nations League wasn't in existence when he was England
he'd be a
manager.
genius,
I mean, you have to be a spectacularly bad team not to qualify for the 2020 Euros. I mean, I think in this Nations League, the League A and League B, there's 24 teams in it. 21 of the 24 were at Euro 2016. And then if you don't actually qualify in the actual Euro qualifiers, you get a second stab at it.
Yeah.
But the reality is that most of those teams will have qualified already. So the playoff places drop to leagues, divisions 3 and 4, whatever they are, League C and D.
Why have they done it?
Well, I don't know. There's going to be 4 places up for grabs
Maybe
for
they like
the
all the
20 who
wins.
haven't qualified. It's
Right, I guess you
insane.
guys aren't fans of it, and basically we can take for the last 5 or 6 minutes of the show.
If you can find a fan of it, good luck, get him on there.
OK, the search begins. Tweet us at Sunday Sup if you're a fan of the UEFA Nations
The
League.
hipsters on there.
Neil, quick chat on... Yeah, the hipsters, they'll
Yeah.
love it. In which case we might come around to that next week. Martin O'Neill, the job that he's done with Republic of Ireland, just have a quick word on him and his achievement, because the performance against Wales was kind of a classic O'Neill side, wasn't it?
I mean, brilliant.
It felt that way.
With what he's got, because this is not a good team. This is not a good squad, and with what he's got to have achieved, what he's done is remarkable. Not just Martin O'Neill. I think Roy Keane has had a huge impact behind the scenes. If you listen to what the players are saying, and the combination between the two of them has really worked, and he inspired a performance against a much better team. He inspired that victory. I don't see them getting through the next level, because I think you're going up a level. I really don't see that. But I followed them in the last Euros, and although it was an Italian second team they played when they had to win, that was remarkable winning that game in the way they did late on. So he has this ability to inspire, to get the best out of a team which shouldn't have been winning that game but did. Superb finish, and it's fantastic for. It's fantastic for a tournament if the Republic get there. Now, you would say, every country would say that, it's fantastic for our country, but there is not a country that brings more fans, more fun, and more colour to a tournament, apart from maybe, I don't know, Holland probably on a par on a good day than Ireland do, with not a spot of bother. It's an absolute joy going round with them. The football's not always great, but going round with Ireland's a joy and what they bring to a tournament.
Yeah, certainly is a good atmosphere around them. OK, next up we're going to talk about this man. He's on the back page of the Mail. Mauricio Pochettino, Tottenham won yesterday. He says he'd love to manage England. More on that next. OK, welcome back. Just want to talk about the secrets of the Spurs revolution as the Mail have billed it this morning. They've serialised this book by Mauricio Pochettino. It's his diary of the season. Poch, I'd love to manage England at some stage. That's on the back of the Mail, and there's a spread inside as well. How I turned Harry Kane into a warrior. Lots of other bits and pieces. Dele Alli talks, Daniel Levy talks, Harry Kane talks about his own progress under Mauricio Pochettino in this diary. Is there any danger of Pochettino doing it? Can it be at all damaging? Spilling some of the secrets from behind the scenes at Tottenham's training ground, of course, White Hart Lane and now Wembley Stadium as well, their temporary home.
I think it's easy if you've done it on the back of winning a title. I think when you've, finished second, third, or whatever it is he's done, and not yet got that Spurs side over the line, maybe not. I mean, look, we want managers to talk. We want them to be forthcoming. Pochettino is very much in that category. And
because the best of it looks to me, James, is next week how Eric Dyer's head was turned by Manchester United, because also they were trying to get him for the last 6 months, final 6 months of last season. Also, they're billing it as the truth behind the rift with Kyle Walker, who then moved to Manchester City.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say you never get someone like Sir Alex Ferguson doing that, but we were just chatting before about he did a few sort of season diaries in the past, but then, like you say, won 10 titles or something. I don't know how beneficial that is to anyone really at Spurs, or to what Pochettino wants to do, sort of divulging that to a wider audience. It doesn't make the time of it doesn't make that much sense. If he'd left Spurs and he'd gone to Spain or whatever, and he'd got some diary coming out, I mean, maybe I'm overthinking it, but I mean the stuff on Kane is interesting. I don't think there's any problem with that being out. He talks about how after the game against Monaco, they sat down and he relayed a conversation that he had had as a player with Bielsa. Delivered some home truths about him not being the defender he used to be, and explaining this to Kane, and the reaction has been very, very encouraging from it, and the results have been there. That sort of stuff is really interesting, really beneficial, but maybe discussing Dyer and Man United, I'm not sure.
Which is next week. But what I found really fascinating was that how the tactics that Pochettino had employed to get Kane to come to him, because Pochettino went and sat in an armchair at the training ground overlooking the training fields and waited for Harry to...
It was a test, wasn't it?
To come over. It was a test, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he did come over and then he chatted for, a couple of hours, really. And it'd be interesting if he hadn't come over, What? Well, I mean, what would still be seen. Yeah, what would his reaction be? Would he think less of the player? Would he, would it happen at a later point? And there's a bit. I think Kane talked as well himself about. I think he came back, thought he was in decent shape, and found out his body fat was 18%, and it was the highest in the squad.
That's remarkable, yeah. That back in 2014.
And he was like, Pochettino made that quite clear that was unacceptable.
What is really wrong with doing this? It's interesting. It's interesting for Spurs fans.
Why has he done it then? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. Why has he done it?
Maybe he's like the idea of it. Maybe he wants to get out there more about himself. I think one of the reasons sometimes fans feel a little bit that there's too big a gap between them and the players is they don't actually know enough about them anymore to a great extent. We try to tell them as much as we possibly can, but they're so micromanaged that, oh my God, he's not taking an answer on that. Can we stick to pot noodles or something at a sponsorship launch or something like that? It's not Watergate. What is the big deal here? Why shouldn't we learn about the minutiae that's going on behind the scenes? It makes the sport more interesting. It makes it more interesting for the fans. The fans can then connect to the character. They know more about him. People at Watford love Troy. We were talking about Troy Deeney earlier. His name will become greater than possibly his ability, because he's one of those guys that people can connect to because of the way he comes across. So why shouldn't more characters in the game be able to express themselves like this?
He's naturally engaging as well.
Pochettino doesn't do one-on-one interviews. Daniel Levy doesn't do one-on-one interviews. This is controlling the message, isn't it? This is because all of that, you know, if anyone worth their salt who sat down with Pochettino at a one-on-one interview would ask about Harry Kane, would try to extract that sort of detail about his relationship with Harry Kane. They would try to extract, you know, various things have been in here, how he felt about Eric Dyer and Manchester United, for instance. But he doesn't do those. And Daniel Levy doesn't do one-on-one interviews either. But they're involved with this because they can control the message, and the only stuff out there is what they want out there. So they must want it out there for a reason. So that gives Daniel Levy the opportunity to explain why Tottenham's transfer policy is this and stuff like that. Whereas if that was in a one-on-one interview, he might get a couple fired at him that he wasn't so comfortable with, and he wouldn't be able to control the message in the same way, because if he didn't want to answer the question, all he could say was no comment, and then you don't look very good if you're saying no comment all the time. So it's further evidence in terms of why has he done it. It's further evidence of people in football and football clubs wanting complete control of the message all the time, and that's very much an aspect of modern football now. You don't get those interviews where you can ask. You know, Mourinho's interview at his post-match interview, so that's in front of the whole press, was 4.5 minutes long yesterday. 4.5 minutes long. You know, because Manchester United, no doubt Jose, weren't particularly happy with the direction the press conference was going in, where people were firing in questions about, well, why did you play like this, and why weren't you more adventurous, and don't you think you should have had a go at them a bit more? And they didn't like it. He was clearly not happy with it, and so thanks very much, boom, and gone. But no doubt, if there was a chance for a book where he could, you know, devote a couple of pages, 2,000 words to why he played like that at Liverpool, that's no problem.
Guardiola's done that. I mean,
you have to leave it there. Sorry, James.
Books.
Yeah, it's a shame we haven't got a Sunday supplement diary. Maybe someone should. Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, there you
do that. Okay. Thanks very much to the guys this morning for their company. We'll see them again very soon. Thanks to Martin, to James, and to Neil.
Sky Sports. Feel it all.